Here are 4 Stoic ideas that will change your reality if you apply them. I really do believe these 4 ideas can change the way you see life, the way you think, and also just how you feel. So stick around until the last one and tell me if I'm right. See if this really does change your life and revolutionize your world. Number 1, the first Stoic idea comes to us straight from Seneca. He's a prime Stoic philosopher who talks about the fact that the mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. The mind that is anxious about future events is miserable. And how true is that? And how much do we all worry about future events? How much do we all have anxiety about future events? Maybe there's a select, very small percentage of the population that doesn't get anxious about the future. And I don't think this is about being perfect. We're always going to be working through some of these things. But what if we could live without getting as anxious about future events? And who's to say we cannot? In fact, I'm here to tell you, you can live and not get as anxious about future events. And it is a process. But the reason Seneca talks about this is he's implying that we suffer more based on our thoughts of the future than on the actual, tangible present and what is happening now in our lives. The future troubles us because we're thinking about it, not because it's happening, since obviously the future has not happened yet. And we're in the present moment, in the now, but yet we're projecting our thoughts into a future moment, worrying about things that don't necessarily exist outside of our minds. In fact, we're worrying about things that do not exist and that may not ever exist. If we're honest with ourselves, how often are we anxious about things in the future, worried about things in the future, and it's all just a crock, a big crock? It never happens, or it happens in an entirely different way. This happens all the time. And I think we need to learn not to be so anxious about future events. We can prepare, we can plan, and maybe a little bit of anxiety can be healthy to prepare us for certain possibilities. But we don't want to have full-on anxiety about future events that are not real yet, that have not transpired and may not ever transpire. So that's number 1. Number 2, also coming to us from Seneca, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. If these things seem true to you, give me a like and subscribe to the channel before we continue, because I'll be coming to you with lots of interesting videos about mindset, philosophies, Stoic philosophies, and otherwise, and strategies for changing some of these patterns in your life, which you can test yourself and let me know if they work, because I know they've worked for me. So number 2 here from Seneca, saying we suffer more in imagination than in reality, continues with his first thought, right? We're worrying about things that may or may not ever come to pass, and we're worrying about things that have already passed us, things that have passed us by. In other words, these are things which are not necessarily real, they're not tangible, and it dives right into a central theme of Stoic philosophy, which is we should concern ourselves with the things we can control, not with what we cannot control. And there are many things we can't control. We need to recognize that. And we don't want to focus on the things we can't control. We don't want to invest our energy in the things we cannot control, invest our worries in those things, and torment ourselves over these things we cannot control. And the Stoics believe we can't control the past, and we can only control the future sometimes and only through the present moment. So we won't control the future by worrying, but we can potentially affect the future by how we interact with what's right here in front of us, the moment that we're in, right? So we need to be focused on that tangible moment right here in front of us and what we're doing and feeling and thinking in the moment. And hopefully it's not something tied into anxieties, regrets, or whatnot about the past or about the future. We need to be mindful of the present moment, in other words, and we can't really be mindful of the present moment if we're tied up in the past or being hauled off into the future. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is going to dive into some of Marcus Aurelius' philosophies. And Marcus Aurelius says, never let the future disturb you. I really love that, by the way. Never let the future disturb you. He says, you will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. Never let the future disturb you. You will meet it, if you have to, with the same weapons of reason which today arm you against the present. And what Marcus Aurelius is saying here is that it's not the future that harms us. It's how we deal with it in the present moment. And we shouldn't let it disturb us. We should not let the future disturb us, because if we're able to deal with the present moment that's in front of us right now, we have no reason to believe that we won't be able to deal with the present moment when we arrive at it in the future, if you want to look at it that way, because even then you'll still be in the present moment. However, when you do arrive at that present moment, you should be able to deal with it if you're dealing with this moment right now, okay? So you shouldn't let the future disturb you. You're going to deal with it. You're going to be okay in the future, just like you're okay now, hopefully, right? In this present moment. So in this present moment, you're dealing with it, and the idea is in the future, you'll deal with it just fine as well, especially if you apply some of these principles, which are don't be caught up in the past or fearful of the future, anxious about things that have already passed or regretting things that have already passed, and so on. Idea number 4. Actually, before we get to number 4, okay? Before we get to number 4, remember, it is not just our future that troubles us, it's also our memory of the past, right? So also, we don't want to let the past disturb us. So Marcus Aurelius said, never let the future disturb you. I'd like to add, never let the past disturb you either, okay? Learn from the past, and if you need to, change your perspective about the past. Something horrible may have happened. Something bad may have happened, but there's usually something you can learn from it, even if it's just so that there's less chance it'll happen to you again or happen to another person, right? Maybe you can share your experiences. Maybe you've changed as a result, become stronger, wiser, more adaptable. And there's so many things we can learn from our experiences. So our higher faculties as humans, think of our acute memory and our thinking and logic, are blessings, but they can also be a curse if we don't watch over them and monitor them, right? So we need to be mindful of how we're thinking, how we're worrying, how we're anxious. And I think a little bit of anxiety and tension is natural and potentially good for performance, in my opinion. But oftentimes we let it get to a level which is unhealthy. And I see that happening so much. It's happened to me, of course, and it happens to all of us. And we have ways, we have tools for dealing with these situations. And by applying these ideas, you will gain awareness, first of all, when you're doing this, and you can apply some of the tools that I talk about on my channel here. Just subscribe, and you can also check us out at Instagram in order to learn more of these strategies to work with your thoughts and to quiet your thoughts, because that is also a crucial element. But let's get to number 4 finally, the fourth and the last Stoic idea, which I believe will change your reality. And this one's a little different than the others, so it goes off on a bit of a tangent that is not as related to the previous ideas, but still relates to time and how we're dealing with time. It is another Marcus Aurelius quote, which says, "You could be good now, instead you choose tomorrow. You could be good now, instead you choose tomorrow." I first heard this one from Ryan Holiday, which if you haven't checked out his channel, you probably have if you're interested in this material. Take a look at his channel because he's amazing. But he said, I learned from one of his videos about this quote. Marcus Aurelius says, "You could be good now, instead you choose tomorrow." This is about procrastination, but I believe it's about more than that, right? Because it's talking about the fact that sometimes we delay, sometimes we hold off on things in our lives, looking for a perfect moment, thinking there'll be a better moment in the future for us to do something, for us to try to accomplish something, for us to start the business, for us to talk to that person, for us to learn that skill, for us to get outside, for us to start a workout program. But there's never going to be a perfect time. We have to get down in the trenches of this present tangible moment. That's where we have power. That is where there is a great deal of power for us. And the more we start to explore that, the better. In fact, check out some of my other videos where we'll talk about stillness practices. I'll tell you right now, just focusing on your breathing is a good way to sort of connect with the present moment. It doesn't require much more than that. You just focus on your breathing as you're breathing naturally. You don't even have to modify your breathing. And that will slow down your thoughts or cause your thoughts to stop altogether. So with all that being said, give us a like. Thank you for joining us. Have a good one.